One thing I do find to be a helpful exercise when you're evaluating players is to try and come up with an NFL comparison for them. And while no two players are ever exactly the same, right? That is true. It can serve as a nice baseline foundation for potential expectations. It can help you to understand how that player's skills production could translate to the next level. Now, with that said, you will find a lot of times, even with really good prospects, that we will have a tendency to not go all the way with them in terms of the comparison. Maybe it's because a thing of, well, I don't want to compare them to a guy who was a first ballot Hall of Famer. That feels unreasonable and unrealistic. Perhaps. Until you realize, hey, Tom Brady was a 6th-round pick. Drew Brees was a 2nd-round pick. Aaron Rodgers was taken late in round 1. I'm just talking about quarterbacks alone, right? If they were slam dunk Hall of Famers coming into their draft classes, they would have been taken much, 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 much higher, right? And you could do that same exercise for every single position. So my point is when we are evaluating talent, we shouldn't shy away from the really big comparisons, because most of these guys that became that big comparison baseline weren't that coming out of college. So I look at Zay Flowers, and to me, this is my wide receiver 1 in this draft class. This is the wide receiver that impressed me the most. This is the wide receiver that I looked at and said, I'd be stunned if he doesn't make a difference in the National Football League. And as I watched him more and more and more, the guy that he reminded me of was Antonio Brown. And you say, well, don't hang that on him. Well, here's the reality. Is that Antonio Brown was a former 6th-round pick. And he had a borderline Hall of Fame career. And maybe just off of the merits of his career in the 2000s, he should be in the Hall of Fame. We'll see how long it takes him to actually get in someday because of some of the other crap, right? But when I watched Zay Flowers, it reminded me quite a bit of Antonio Brown. He's got great quickness getting off the line, long speed to be a vertical home run threat. Not a huge receiver by any stretch of the imagination, just like Antonio Brown wasn't. He's got good hands. He attacks the ball with his hands. He avoids letting it get into his body too often. He's able to make defenders miss in the open field due to his quickness and agility. He's really sudden in and out of his breaks. He uses his upper body really, really well to sell his routes. He's able to piece together and combine double moves and combinations in his routes. Just bottom line is he's a separation machine. He generates a ton of separation. And while granted, there is more than one formula for success for an NFL wide receiver. Number one, if you had your druthers, all else fails, you want a guy to be able to get separation. Right? Even like the big physical guys that could go and out-muscle people, that's great, but you want guys that can get separation. You want guys that can work back to the ball, get the ball, make plays happen once they get it in their hands. And I look at Zay Flowers and I say, this is a guy, he's got an expansive route tree. He could probably play anywhere. He's going to probably primarily be best suited for the slot. But his skills and his route tree would allow him to play anywhere, although I'm starting to think more and more, just like the old left tackle versus right tackle debate, that's really dated thinking in terms of the NFL. And we ought to start changing the way we think about things. But I look at Zay Flowers, and when I looked at that size, quickness, speed, hands, route running ability, I said, my God, he really does look like Antonio Brown to me. Now, certainly Flowers isn't perfect as a prospect. He's not going to run through a ton of tackle attempts. Like, there's absolutely great run after the catch ability there, but it's more due to shiftiness, quickness, agility than it is going to be able to power through people. Whereas like Quentin Johnson, even though he's kind of skinny for his 6'3" size, like he will run with some power. He can be a beast to have to take down in the open field. With Zay Flowers, you look at him and his catch radius is kind of average. He could be better at high pointing the ball. But, for a slot receiver like him, how much is he going to have to be able to high point the ball? Yeah, quite a bit, Depending on the quarterback he plays with, the way he's utilized. Might need to be able to work back to the ball for the back shoulders and the fades and the jump balls. You got to be able to go up and get it sometimes. And he could have done a little bit better job of that. The other thing that stood out to me with Zay Flowers is sometimes he's got frenetic energy, also almost to the point of you're going a little too fast. You're getting a little too outside of yourself. Just calm it down just a little bit. Just a little bit. Sometimes guys that are getting ready to go to Pound Town and they get too excited, just calm it down a peg and probably be just fine, right? She will appreciate sometimes if you calm it down just a little bit. Once you're one of them nasty bitches, then in that case they want you to go to Pound Town, and they meant Pound fucking Town. But yeah, when I look at Zay Flowers and I watched him, every time it looked like you saw him, he was open, not by a little, but by quite a bit. And it wasn't like he was in one of these systems that really manufactured a bunch of space for him. He wasn't in a system that was geared towards helping the wide receiver get artificial separation, if you will. This was real legit separation. Yeah, out of all the receivers I watched for this year's draft class, the one that stood out to me as the best was Zay Flowers. That combination of quickness, route running, ability to separate, run after catch ability, that was him. And like I said, he's a first-round pick to me. He's the one guy I would feel comfortable taking in the top half of round one. If you got a wide receiver that you look at and you say, man, I feel the safest about him, I just, personally, I can't imagine why. And I could be missing something, to be fair. And again, some of this, as I called out in the Jackson Smith and Najigba scouting report, is it could be my bias towards Bears fans are kind of boneheads. So I'm automatically predispositioning and biasing myself to saying that he can't possibly be wide receiver one because so many Bears fans think he is. But realistically, watching Zay Flowers at Boston College, Najigba at Ohio State, I can't imagine comparing these two side by side and thinking that Najigba is better than Flowers. I just don't fucking see it. Flowers has better hands. He's got more athleticism, more quickness, more speed. He's a better route runner, and he gets even more separation. He's a bigger threat after the catch. How the hell would Najigba be wide receiver one in this case? He's not, folks. It's Zay Flowers. And whoever takes him, what I ask NFL teams is, don't let the fucking Chiefs get Zay Flowers. That's all. Is that too much to ask? Somebody like the Chargers or somebody, he'd be knocking on his door. The Giants should be freaking out to get a guy like Zay Flowers. He could come in and he's going to be a wide receiver one for somebody.